Hi guys! Welcome back to my channel. My name is Taylor, and today I'm going to be talking about how I discovered my love of nonfiction and classic literature. Peep, the new finished object. Tutorial for this is going to be coming soon. I'm very excited about it. This is so cozy. My god. So I want to start out by saying that you don't have to read nonfiction or classic literature to be a reader, but I am going to talk about how, for me, reading classic literature and nonfiction has helped my reading comprehension immensely. First off, literacy is at an all-time low for the United States, with 54% of people reading below a 6th grade level, according to the National Literacy Institute. And literacy is generally defined as the ability to read and write, but it also encompasses things like reading comprehension, education, and the utilization of reading, according to the APM Research Lab. First off, subscribe to the channel. Most people who watch my videos are not subscribed, and I want you to be a part of our little reading and crochet community. We have a great time over here. I do tutorials, I talk about books that I'm reading, and I do plan on getting back to more of the crochet vlogs, or at least I want to. So stick around for that. Please subscribe, give this video a like, it really helps out, and let's jump in. Reading comprehension is something that has always been pretty difficult for me. I have always loved reading, but I can be a bit slow when text is particularly chunky. Whenever we had to do comprehension exercises in school, I had a very hard time understanding what was being asked of me, and it never really got better. With standardized testing having such short limits on the reading portions, I couldn't read the whole story and answer the questions that were asked of me, as opposed to the English sections where, you know, you had to like underline or correct sentences. I was very good at that, and I was very good at writing, but the read, answer questions portion, I couldn't do it. A lot of times I couldn't understand the literary meaning in things. For example, I watched a great video essay on classic literature recommendations where the creator split the books into easy, medium, and hard. And in the medium hard category, she had put Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. And she talked about how the book was so profound and funny to her, and her analyses were nothing like my experience reading the book. But I read Great Expectations when I was a sophomore in high school, and I hated it. I had such a hard time with the prose, and I fell behind fast and couldn't keep up with the chapter expectations with all of my other activities and homework. I made it through the unit and tried to participate in discussions, but the only takeaway I had from this particular book was, you will never be good enough for the wrong person, which I now realize might not have been the meaning of the story. Like, yes, that's a fine takeaway, but it is a very surface level takeaway for the book as a whole. Now, was it Dickens' clunky prose that was ill-suited for a high schooler, or was it my comprehension skills that weren't up to par compared to my classmates? I'll never really know, but I do think that it's a bit of both. When I went to college, I noticed things became much easier for me to understand when I, 1, wanted to know what was going on, and 2, was able to analyze on my own. I flourished in my college English classes where I had to read passages and then write papers on it. Normally these were short stories or speeches that people were giving, and that's a much easier, that's much more digestible than an entire book having to, figure it out in a way. I didn't have to adhere to multiple choice questions about non-important details of these fiction books. Now that I'm no longer in college, it's easy for these muscles that were stretched and challenged in academic settings to atrophy. And I felt the hangover from my college learning for a good 6 months before my mind started to hunger for knowledge again. I wasn't in a place to go back to school, and I'm still not. While I would love to go to grad school one day, I, like my job, and I was enjoying the freedom at the time where I didn't feel my worth was tied to grades and studying all the time. And I'm not sure I'm ready to go back to that yet. Also, you know, financial barriers to entry and all that. With my new disposable income, I wandered into the Sioux Falls Barnes & Noble to buy up the Warriors books by Aaron Hunter because I wanted to feel something. And placed in front of the children's section was the social studies or social issues section. And I had never been one for nonfiction, as most of my exposure from it was memoirs and self-help, which I have a lot of opinions on self-help, but that is a video for another time. But I was pulled in by the thought of learning about feminism and hearing a few titles on TikTok, which includes Hood Feminism by Mickey Kendall. I started buying books on social issues that interested me. Feminism, race theory, and queer history and theory. While it was cool to buy these books, they sat on my shelves like mountains to be conquered. I was really nervous about reading them because my pastor told me that I might not be smart enough to understand what was going on in these books. I tried reading Hood Feminism in February of 2023, and it took me like 3 months to read. Why? Because I thought I could read it like a fiction book. I thought I could, you know, sit down and devour it. I was like, oh, you know, it's 260 pages. I could do that in an afternoon. I thought I could sit down and leisurely read this book and let all of the information passively enter into my brain. But each time I sat down with this book was so anxiety-inducing. I wanted to read with it and engage with the pages in front of me, but it was so hard. It was so hard. Fast forward a few years, and the only nonfiction books I've read were a few memoirs that I listened to on audio from my library, mostly celebrity memoirs, and if you've ever read one of those, they can be super hit and miss on the quality of them. In 2024, I made a promise to myself to start reading my nonfiction books. It was ridiculous that I hadn't read so many of them yet, but they were sitting on my shelf. I felt fake. Like I was going to absorb the knowledge one day, but that day just wasn't coming. I promised myself that I would read 1 chapter a day. I wasn't going to try and binge the books like a romance novel, just 1 chapter a day. Each book has to end at some point, so 1 chapter a day and I will get through it. I should also mention that I made this promise to myself in very late of 2024, around October. So I started with Bell Hooks' All About Love, New Visions. It was revolutionary to me. I loved reading her insightful essays in all of its aspects, not just romantic love. It's a short and digestible read for anyone who wants to try nonfiction for the first time. I do think that love is entrenched in everything we do, and I think that this is essential reading for every living person, but that's just my opinion. I was super eager to jump into the next book once it was done, and since October 2024, I've read about 10 nonfiction books. I am no expert by any means, but I can tell that my reading comprehension has skyrocketed from reading and engaging with these texts. I don't annotate my fiction books unless I read something that really resonates with me deeply, so the concept was like super foreign to me. I started highlighting and annotating and tabbing passages in All About Love that spoke to me. Also, this is just fun to do. I started highlighting, annotating, and tabbing passages in All About Love that spoke to me. Annotating came easily to me for the first time in my life. Unlike in high school when we were encouraged to tab important passages in the books we were reading, as if I could discern with what that meant. This is not to say that I can read anything with ease. By Julia Shaw and All the Single Ladies by Rebecca Traister are 2 books that I have read and have been reading recently that have continued to push me. Both are dense books with a lot of interviews and statistics and history associated with them. On top of that, their chapters are pretty long, but by just slowing down a little bit, by reading that 1 chapter a day, I have been able to, engage with these texts, to learn from them, and just kind of be in awe of my own brain. Going back to kind of classics, I totally understand their literary merit, and I have been reading a lot more classics. I've been interested in reading so many classics. Recently, I have read Pride and Prejudice, Wuthering Heights, and The Picture of Dorian Gray. And I have Don Quixote and I want to read that super bad, especially from another YouTuber that I watched that said classic books that are cool and swag, and they were all huge books. It was the Count of Monte Cristo, Don Quixote, and Moby Dick. Those are his 3 classic books that are cool and swag. But from reading nonfiction, my reading comprehension has gone up significantly because I have been, engaging with these texts and understanding what's going on. For classics, I've been listening to those on audiobook, checked out from my library, and that has helped me immensely understand what is going on in those books. At my first internship in 2018, I actually worked on a chicken farm as a managerial intern. The complex manager of this particular farm was in an application and interview process to get into an agricultural, like an adult agricultural society sort of thing. And he said something to me while he was going through that process that has always stuck with me. And he was in his, I would say, mid-40s, maybe late 30s to mid-40s. He said, Taylor, at some point once you graduate from college, your knowledge is going to plateau. And you need to go in pursuit of knowledge on your own terms. And that always stuck with me, like it always did. I always wanted to be someone who was a lifelong learner. And I think that being a lifelong learner is super important, not just within the context of, TikTok or YouTube. I think that video essays and TikTok and Instagram and all the social media, it's really, really great to get all of these different aspects of things. But I do think that algorithms keep us in an echo chamber of our own opinions. Whereas, reading a book, it's not, while this book has its own opinions and whatever, it's not pushed by an algorithm that is made to please you. And I think that that is really important. I think that, all of it is really important to our lifelong learning. Yeah, that's the video. That's how I have improved my reading comprehension as an adult, a little bit about, my struggles in English classes. And it's crazy because English has always been my favorite subject. I've always loved reading. But I remember in particular, we read this book when I was a kid, about this boy who domesticated a raccoon. And we always sat in these pods, and I was the slowest reader out of all of us. I didn't understand what was going on in the text, nor could I get through it in a reasonable amount of time based on the reading time that our teacher was giving us. To this day, I couldn't tell you what was going on, but I haven't read The Great Gatsby since high school, and I could tell you a ton of what's going on, or what went on in that book. I read Their Eyes Were Watching God in high school, and I could tell you all about what went on in that book. And I think, too, a lot of it has to do with, does the text resonate with you, and, how was it taught to you, and all these different things. But I also think that audiobooks help my comprehension a lot, because I can slow it down or I can speed it up. But yeah, just a little deep dive into my own personal psyche and life and all that stuff. I hope you liked it. Let me know if you liked this video. I really had a fun time writing it up. I know that it's more opinion piece put to video, but I would love to do more of these. So let me know what you think. Please give this video a like, subscribe to the channel so that we can grow our little community. I would love to have you a part of our little reading community. And I will see you guys next time. Bye!